So Muka Tangata is the Workforce Development Council for the food and fibre sector. We are one of 6 workforce development councils, and we are the voice for the sector in the vocational education and training space. We work on ways to enhance the system to better meet the needs of iwi, Māori and industry. And we do this through engaging with individuals, organisations and businesses to listen and to understand what you're experiencing, what you're hearing. We use this information to help us to develop qualifications, standards, and micro-credentials that reflect what we are hearing from people like yourselves. We provide assessment and moderation services to monitor high-quality program delivery, and we use that information to advise government on program funding and investments. Finally, our mahi is underpinned by honouring te tiriti, or waitangi, and advancing Crown Māori relationships to provide vocational education and training solutions. Ka pai, tēnā koutou. Next slide, please. Last year, we released 14 industry-specific workforce development plans, which you can view, if you haven't already, at that address, just on the top of the slide. These plans are living and interactive online resources that reflect what we've heard and learnt from our sector. The plans capture the key workforce and training information at each industry group, identify the workforce and skills issues facing the food and fibre sector, and identify the roadmap of actions that we will take to address those issues. Use this information to guide our advice on food and fibre training funding to the Tertiary Education Commission, and to drive the development of food and fibre qualifications, standards and micro-credentials. If you haven't already, whānau, go and check them out. You won't be disappointed. So, he aha tēnei me Te Haumako. What is Te Haumako? Te Haumako is the rich, productive and fertile soil that fosters the growth of harakeke bushes. It is the Māori metaphor for building a strong, sturdy and well-built resource that embeds te tirohanga Māori worldviews in our mahi. Therefore, Te Haumako is the name given to our approach to embedding te tirohanga Māori into our work to enhance the strength and quality of the fibres of our Māori workforce development plan, and where Māori wisdom enriches the very fibres of our mahi, cultivating strength, success, and quality. Apai. E hoa Muka Tangata engagement, qualification, moderation, and research specialist, which is the composition or the makeup of staff in our Workforce Development Council, have been gathering information, data, stories, and anecdotes from iwi, Māori, and industry stakeholders all over Aotearoa. And I'll be coming for you too, Angela, to help add some more value to the information that we've already got. Whānau, we've been humbled at the response we have received and the openness in which our whānau have cooperated and shared their stories. It has been a difficult task to respectfully represent the plethora of feedback we have received, but for the purposes of this hui, we present some key kaupapa we would like to share with you today. Nō reira whānau, hand the rākau over to John Henare. Tēnā koe e hoa.
Tēnā koe, James. Kia ora tātou. Gosh, where to begin? So in some ways we learned a heck of a lot, but I don't think you'd be surprised also that there was not a lot of surprises in what we did hear and what we did read about. In fact, I bet across this hui here, there's not one person who doesn't have multiple examples of where a Māori solution has worked so well for Māori. I think it's sort of an accepted norm. But there is a ton of research that shows how Māori learners in particular respond to mātauranga Māori as they learn. I guess if you have a particular interest in that area, we've summarised quite a bit of that research on our website. There's a little heading, Whiria Te Muka Tangata. If you do have a bit of a bent and your desire to read some of that research, then I'll steer you towards our website. Feel free to check that out. Right. So Māori, again, no big surprise. Māori are big players in the food and fibre sector, and not only as the workers, but also as owners. I guess some examples. I think it was 6 years ago. It was estimated the Māori asset base in the food and fibre sector was $14 billion, and that's growing. And in some industries, at this stage, there are more than 20% of the workforce who are Māori. So it's a growing sector, and a lot more room to grow, which I'll soon talk about. The qualification system, it's really complex, and it is unnecessarily complicated for everyone. And as we looked at solutions, we decided that we had to have the opportunity to meet Māori needs and make them front and centre of the change that we were seeking. It's also no surprise, I guess, that our industries all want more skilled Māori workers. Of course they do. It's because, the stats are out there. There's estimates that by 2040, which coincidentally is 200 years since the signing of the treaty, that about 1/4 of the potential workforce under 40 will be Māori. So hence why a lot of industry players right now or understand the need to do what they can now to set themselves up well so that they can respond well to the needs of Māori in the future. And sorry, I've just lost my track. There we go. The last thing, Māori want more Māori leaders. Again, the representation across industry is there are not many visible leaders in Māori agribusiness. There are leaders, but they're not necessarily quite humble. They're not putting themselves out there for others to see that there is a progression towards leadership if they wish to explore that. That should, again, come as no real surprise. Next slide, please, Krista. Okay, so what we heard, we essentially divided into 4 broad kaupapa. And we're still, I guess, finalising the exact actions that will form part of Te Haumako, and that'll be released in about June. But we're really pleased to share our thinking at this early stage. And I think the first thing to note is that across our entire work program, as an absolutely essential factor throughout is Te Tirohanga Māori, and it must be recognised, it must be valued, and of course it must be reflected in the teaching of the qualifications and the programs that are being designed now. I guess as the slide mentions here, the 4 kaupapa quite broadly. First is fit for purpose qualifications. So, and not just qualifications, but the standards that sit in there and the training that comes with it. It must be fit for purpose for Māori learners to meet Māori and, of course, the wider industry needs. And I guess a lot of our focus is on what are the appropriate and flexible delivery models with Mātauranga Māori as the core content. Another aspect of that, I guess, is that we know there's a lot of informal, non-formal learning that occurs. And I guess one of the major components that we've heard that we wish to explore is the development of a micro-credential, like a little bite-sized chunk of learning that applies, in iwitanga. So there is some delicateness around that, around putting something into a framework that is a recognised framework like the New Zealand Qualifications Framework, but clearly that is something, and the desire to do that is what we've heard. So that's something we're exploring. I'll stop saying in a minute. Support Māori learners to succeed. Gosh, where do you start with that? There are some of the more technical aspects of our work around the quality assurance system. Again, if you have a bent in that particular area or a desire to learn more, it's quite a specialised part of our work, and we do have that on our website. And feel free to, you can ask us about it later if you wish, but it's Te Whakatonga on our website. A big part of it is we are creating a food and fibre skills framework. I think there's a realisation that there is the skills people acquire in this sector in particular are actually transferable, and they should be transferable across not just the food and fibre sector, but even more broadly. So I think there's a need to recognise or to reflect those skills in the qualifications that don't necessarily sit that way at the moment. And the big part of the final thing was pastoral care, which is a lovely label. It's a lovely label to put on what we might know as manaakitanga. You know, it is a component of what Māori do naturally, which doesn't necessarily expand out across other parts of the vocational education training system. So there is a greater need to recognise the need, not just the need for that, but how it could be incorporated, I guess. I'll just wrap through the last two here. So not to diminish them, but because time is of the essence. Māori industry leadership development. Now, it's again, preaching to the converted here, our tūpuna's knowledge handed down generation to generation, and that's been added to by plenty of researchers along the way. What possibly is missing, though, is a recognition of that leadership and that style of leadership, and also how to pass that knowledge on in ways that allow young people coming through the system to gain the skills and confidence they need to go alongside the knowledge and the jobs on the farm. Thanks, Smithy. So our plan, we want to build a framework of leadership principles, and these are all just lovely words, aren't they? But we need to work with providers, our provider partners, to teach them these principles through things like wānanga, mentoring, and reflection. There is a desire to learn more about this. We need to give our, again, like I said before, our young leaders the confidence and the support to step up to those roles. And I guess we're working with our partners to try and get more research-based work on this. And we want to create a micro-credential. Sorry, I nearly forgot about that. A micro-credential, again, one of those bite-sized pieces that recognises this learning, so that then becomes inherently recognised in the qualification system. And finally, pathways. So we want to promote and look at how we can influence better pathways. So someone going from school right through the sector. There are awesome career opportunities in the food and fibre sector, and I think it's critical that we make sure that they're suitable not just for mainstream schooling, but for the whare kura kaupapa system as well. So a lot of work to do, and a lot of work that we've done. So next slide, please, Krista. Cool, right. Now, we started looking at this workforce development plan for Māori, and the first thing we thought about, of course, as any quasi-government or government organisation does, is go, we need to engage with Māori. But then we paused, because it doesn't take much to realise that every other government agency, or those other government agencies who have created workforce plans, have obviously gone out to talk to Māori. So it's behoven on us to beholden we should go out to those agencies, at least read their findings, because, for example, some of them have gone out and engaged with 2,000 plus people, and I guess it's really important that we go out and hear those words that have already been said, and those messages and issues that have already been raised, and acknowledge those. So, in other words, we wanted to hear what Māori have already said about their workforce needs and aspirations. So that was really important to us, to acknowledge that, and to try and get around the engagement fatigue that comes with this constant desire to hear from Māori. Now, just as we thought, just as a lone harakeke bush, for example, will not thrive if it's planted in isolation. Well, we figured that so too, a plan that doesn't link or connect or at least work together in some way with other similar plans is doomed to fail as well. So, number of plans. I'll pick two, just two, and that's not to, again, diminish any others, but these are, I guess, more inherently related to the work we do. One was the MB, Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment, He Kai Kei Aku Ringa. And now that was quite a large focus on removing much more systemic barriers and trying to find ways to increase Māori participation in the workforce in general. And then we looked at the Rautaki mo te Turikura, MPI's version, Ministry for Primary Industries. And theirs was much more about career pathways and leadership in the primary sector, which is us, isn't it? Let's not forget some of the large organisations. I'll just name one in particular, Ngā Paua Tāne, which is in the forestry sector, forestry industry. Again, they represent something like 14,000 folk, and they've just created a strategy just recently, and we needed to make sure that we worked with them to reflect each other. Three common themes. Again, coming back to what I said before, almost there's a bit of a repeat here, but it is about supporting the learner, but not just the learner, but the wider whānau and community, and making sure that these people have accessible learning opportunities. But not just that, but that also includes our Māori approaches. Another finding across all of these was building what we're going to call culturally appropriate learning pathways. And by that I mean, at the moment you can go kohanga, you can then go to kura kaupapa or wharekura, the wānanga, and then suddenly you fall into the vocational training world. And we want to make sure that there is a continuation of that people can see themselves throughout those phases, and you don't have to suddenly have a phase shift into this vocational training world and feel out of place. And again, what I said before about the Māori leadership pathways, we need stories of successful Māori individuals and their businesses. Again, because if as a young person, if you can't see yourself reflected in the industry or see role models or aspirational figures, you're very unlikely to step foot in those yourself. Whew, a lot of words. That's kind of all I got to say. I'm going to pass it back to Krista, I believe, or James.
Yeah, I'll grab it. Thank you, John.
You're going to do? Thank you, James.
Papai. Thanks, John. And I suspect that your kōrero, or indeed the contents of your kōrero, was resonating with our manuhiri. But koutou ngā tō tātou manuhiri, to our manuhiri, that brings us to the end of our kōrero, of the information we were wanting to share with you. And we do have a little bit of time on our hands. So we'd like to extend an opportunity to all three of you, if you wish to make any comments, to give us any feedback, to say, ka pai guys, but did you think about, here are some other things that you might want to consider. So this next little bit is not the only opportunity that you'll be able to feedback to us. But while we have the time and while we have you here, I'd like to just open up the floor for any comments or anything that you'd like to say.
Look, I think it looks great, but probably don't kind of have much to contribute. I think you've probably identified the probably what key issues are and the challenge of how to go forward. I think your point around being able to learn from the other workforce development councils and the other government agencies is critical to prevent duplication. And I guess going forward, I assume you'll continue to do that.
Absolutely. That's part of our role, is to foster that close association, so that because these are large agencies and we're quite a small agency, and it's easy to become a bit lost, both in terms of what they're creating and what we are. So yeah, absolutely, Joe, it's right up there with our priorities. So it's a must. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Oh, I'll go next.
Bye.
Kia ora anō. Probably I can see the struggle in our area, in particular down in Taipu and our rural areas where we're not close to towns and that, and the isolation is probably the key factor for some of our rangatai wanting to get involved. We are isolated. We do have good support for them, but still it's a long way from home, and do get time off, but we go through a lot of staff. The retention of staff, no matter how much training you give them, they move on. To be brutal and honest with you, our staff, some of our staff are there, that's purely for the housing. We offer housing to be on the farm, but that's all they're there for. I'm just being really honest. The culture of our workers needs to be, first and foremost, they need to learn. It's more like a generation gap. Right anō, here in the Waikato, we had training schemes like a tech. You had our women coming up to be nurses, our men coming up to be carpenters, and so forth. Like I can name a few institutes, and they all went to tech, polytech to learn. So I'm hoping that what you're saying here, you're providing that kind of environment of learning. They need that whānau approach. They need that comfort zone when they're learning. So for me, that's great. The current system does not fit for purpose and training. You're more or less seen as a name and a number. I think you need probably iwi, hapu, in particular, to get involved with the training. We've had them here down in Taipu. We've had it down here. It didn't work. And that was lacking the tikanga side of it, that kind of approach, being Māori, because they had lost it, being in town and that. So probably before we can get to the stage of training, maybe a wānanga to momo whakawhanauntangi, to learn the values of what is tikanga, what is kawa, what is pono. That's where a lot of this generation coming through are lacking. They're not getting that from home. I have to get it from somewhere. And for me, I reckon they'll go hand in hand with your training. So that's the feedback from me. Kia ora.
Kia ora. I agree with a lot of those comments too, actually, that particularly around the generational issue that we have with young Māori coming into the industry. Because, with the Z generation, they have grown up in an entirely different environment where the ways that they learn and some of the things that they have, internet and telephones that are constant in their lives all the time, has a huge impact on the type of person that we're bringing into the industry. We see a real lack of passion, I think, in the farming industry in particular, which is really difficult. And how you instill that passion into people to farm is really tricky. I think I've just been recently involved. We did, not through my onuku, but through my ngāti tarawhai, we did a pest control program with, we started with 13 students. We had 10 qualify with their pest control certificate, and we've now got them out in the field with doing pest control in Te Arawa, because we've started a kahui over 7 iwi to form this collective. But that's was a really interesting sort of view into how to get these guys doing, going from being, when they first arrived, in their hoodies, they had no, they just lacked everything, and trying to bring them to a point where they now are, which is just complete change, where they're out in doing things, they're in the morning, they're off, possuming, doing wallabies, and it's just really great to see. So I know, we can do it, but I don't think there's a straight model that fits all. One other thing I know that we have problems with, and particularly in human resource issues on farm, is the management that we often have is at a different generation, and dealing with some of the issues, they don't have the skills to deal with some of the human resource expectations that are there now. And I think there really needs to be a micro-credential or a small course around for our management to say, okay, this is what you've got to do to try and help bring Māori up, and how trying to understand them, but also knowing what they need to do as part of their responsibilities, as management on farm, to particularly around all the different areas that they have to consider now, the health and safety and well-being, and the the personal, the level that they have to go to ensure that their young people are well supported. So yeah, that's another area I think we really need to sort of get into somehow.
Ka pai.
I think that's all.
Ka pai. Thank you, Angela. I just throw it quickly to Mitzi, Krista, and then John, if there's any comments that you want to make before we wrap up.
I'll just start real quickly. Angela, just when you talk about passion, if you could articulate how you inspire that passion in some of your workers, some of those youth, what would you pin that on? What's the most effective way you've found to help create that passion?
It's really hard because I think sometimes you've got it or you haven't.
Right.
It's really, although in saying that, it's creating that interest at a higher level, that it's not just about it. It's not just a job, that you're doing something very valuable, and doing is really adding value to a whole team. That sometimes I think encourages people to get interested in what they're doing. And I think, if they do see that pathway, and if we can feed them forward so that they have, they can see themselves in 10 years' time. And I think that's about when you work with them at the start, you plant the seed of this is where it would be.
Nice.
And try and make them see a pathway forward that can sometimes maybe inspire that passion. So that's really about giving our managers the ability to instill that in Māori. So it's as you say, it's complex, because it's not just about creating all the training, it's about them feeling inspired in their day-to-day work and being part of that.
Nice, thank you.
Bye-bye. Mitzi?
I was going to ask the same question.
Great minds think alike.
you talked about your young people that did the pest control and that there was a change. And I was wondering, again, you said, the thing you said that resonated with me is it's not one model for everybody. It's not one size. But was there something that happened over the course of that short program? I guess it would be quite short. I'm not sure, though. You can correct me. Something that was really a trigger event or process that made a difference, Angela?
I don't. They worked as a team. In the way it was interesting, actually. During the time we did have to let go a few of them for drug use, and actually it was interesting in doing that really settled everybody down, and they all the rest of them were quite focused. That you got down to the core of people who really wanted to be there, and the ones that really wanted to be there and to be proud of what they're doing. I don't know whether it was anything in particular that really, there's different, and this is the thing is too, different things appeal to different people. And I think that sometimes we try to shove people into a box and say, you should learn this way or you should learn that way. And it's very much that everybody is different. And you've got to probably, as a trainer, identify how does this person react the best? Or how is this, person, how do you get the best out of them? It's a bit like Survivor.
Yeah. What I was thinking about was almost that, where you need some authentic experiences where people, I don't know, they have to stay up all night to help help a mare give birth, for example. That would touch people in a way that just going to work every day wouldn't, I imagine. You need those sort of demanding peak experiences, but you can't fabricate those, can you?
No. Send them to us for lamb rearing. That's a challenge. That really sorts them out.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, it's there's no easy sort of one size fits all, and I think a lot of it is having people to train to get the best out of people.
Trainers.
Nice.
Oh boy. Anthony, sorry. You go, Krista. My apologies.
No, I was just going to say I don't have too much more to add. I was thinking about that your one size fits all comment. I thought, I think that's what we're trying to do in the system, but it has to be have some kind of flexibility that it can still cater for different groups of people and cohorts. So not an easy task, but helpful to have input from everybody to figure out exactly how that might work. So yeah, thank you both for your kōrero.
Oh,
and Anthony, I might need to have a talk to you about your blueberries.
Anthony, was there any comments that you wanted to add on top of what Angela's shared?
Hey, whakakapi tēnei kōrero. Back in the days, Mum always said, ka moe he ringa raupa. That's what we're trying to do. E nai nei, he ringa mānia. Mo te rapatopa for the computers. So that's a skill set our young generation are going to. So you'd be hard pressed to marry someone with hard-working hands like mine. Mine are smooth. I haven't got hard, calloused hands like a ringa raupa. But that's what we're trying to do. Trying to bring those values back, particularly for Māori, the ringa raupa aspect. Tainui in particular, I can let you know that I've actually encouraging our rangatei to go into that kind of field, like whether it be a hands-on approach, basically. So they're really endorsing it with their view to the way we're doing well in the economy and the business world. So they're strengthening it. When I was at uni, it was all about being a lawyer and learning te reo Māori. So you've done it. But now they're really pushing for workers. So thank you for the opportunity, and I encourage you for the next step. I'll be looking forward to it. So wonderful to hear from you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, John. Just a question around the channels of education, the teaching that we're looking at here. Is it primarily through the tertiary sector, or we're talking about within the industries themselves through apprenticeships, or what? Or we're talking about something that's quite new and fresh within Mātauranga Māori, those sort of platforms that may not be, evident within the mainstream education system?
Here I was going to say both, but I think you said more than two things. It is the tertiary world itself. That is one component, but I think there is a desire, especially amongst entities like Ngā Pauātāne and the forestry sector, to I guess in a predominantly Māori workforce, such as in forestry, what could be either introduced into the current qualification system to recognise Mātauranga Māori and the Māori approach to learning in particular, or what could sit potentially alongside. It's I guess we're still toying with the options and what that might look like. I think the door is open. We need to be aware of possibilities and not sort of shut ourselves down into too much of a box. So sorry, to answer your question, it's an approach potentially across. The door is open. We're not entirely sure what it might look like at this point, but we're open to suggestions as well.
Right, because
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, the channels that I've seen where there is tertiary education available to Māori, or even to non-Māori, that adopt principles of Mātauranga Māori and tikanga. The only one that sort of comes to mind is through Te Haumako Māori, where they have an allegiance with Stanford University in the US. And that's been going for about 10 years now, and they are sending their, the rangatahi to Stanford. And I'm thinking they've adopted the whole principles of Te Ao Māori within, I don't know if it's all of their faculties, but many of them. And that was so successful that they're continuing with it, and in fact embracing other, I guess you'd call first world nation views,
Yes.
But that doesn't seem to exist here in Aotearoa, and I'm just waiting for that to happen. I'm wondering, when are we going to get that? And that's why I was quite keen to come onto this kōrero, to get glean and understanding of that, because we within our industry, which is fledgling, I mean, we're at the early stages around harakeke, the industry developed around harakeke, especially in the fibres space. We're going to need our rangatahi to be part of that journey from pretty much the onset, because we don't want to adopt a typical orthodox, horticultural, agricultural type perspective on things.
It's a very valid point, and I think currently right now there are many examples of informal approaches to that very thing, because the gap is recognised, that other entities are starting to offer informal Mātauranga Māori, Te Ao Māori based learning to, in particular, Māori. So that's happening on an informal basis, so it may not sit inside the NZQA framework. I guess part of our role is to say, well, okay, it's a content thing, and also it's a delivery or approach thing. So some of the content needs to be much more reflective of Māori values, but also the way things are delivered needs to I guess individualise or recognise particular ways of teaching that Māori probably prefer over current Western models of teaching. So you're right. I think it has been worked on. It's definitely one of our thrusts. Use a good word.
Good point.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
John, just following on from your response, a lot of that informal training and learning is happening within organisations and within iwi and Māori organisations as well. So what we've increasingly heard over the last 12 months or so is a real desire for some of that informal learning, particularly in that Māori worldview space to be recognised in the same way as other subject or topics being recognised, i.e. Credentialised. So that's one of the challenges that has been posed to us, and what we're exploring. What might that look like? For example, we have had and we've had a desire from iwi to somehow have their mātauranga tainui or mātauranga ngāpui or mātauranga te arawa recognised in the form of a micro-credential, kapai, but we don't want to put our mātauranga up onto the framework so that everybody can see it. So there's the challenge between having the actual content, the knowledge, versus having the framework that makes reference to and includes that knowledge. So it's a message we've heard loud and clear, and recognise that we need to work with the industry, work with providers, and obviously with TEC to try and accommodate those. But great question, Mark. Any other questions, whānau? I noticed in the chat there that a number of people, and thank you for sharing your information, have highlighted a desire to work with Muka Tangata, and just interested if you're happy to, for those who did indicate that, what might that look like for you? How would you like that working together relationship to work for you? I'm going to pick on you, Daniela, because you're the first name that I can see on here. And just a statement to say, keen to see how we can work together, if you don't mind.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you for the opportunity. I was just typing it out. Just thinking about the harakeke fibre industry, once we get this building strong and we have learning needs, if we could work with you to help develop those qualifications and learning tools, that would be really beneficial to us and help. We're going to be trying to grow the workforce, and we'd love any help we can get, really.
Kapai. Well, you've got at least 4 people here that you can tap into, and we can certainly make the correct connections to see how we can work together to make that happen.
Kia ora.
Any other questions or comments?
I had one, just one query. I mean, I may find this out through your online media, James, but are you sort of affiliated with any specific tertiary bodies or CRIs or what? And also, in addition to that, do you secure, support funding, like stipends type funding for rangatahi to be involved in specific industry training or education?
So, Mark, Muka Tangata is independent. We are part of the vocational education system. We are funded by government, but we are tasked with a wonderful privilege to be slightly objective and slightly independent from government. We get to advise the Tertiary Education Commission about how they prioritise their funding for our sector. We don't have money to give away. Someone's got their microphone on. John, I think it might be you. I'm not sure, but just wondering if you could mute yourself. Someone who's laughing. Sounded like John. So we don't have much funding. We fund our staff to do our mahi, Mark, and that's to get out and talk with people and hear what really matters and identify the opportunities and challenges that we can help either overcome the challenges or see if there's ways to sort of bring the opportunities to the front. So are we affiliated? We want to affiliate with practically everybody that we can. We're part of the vocational tertiary education network ecosystem, but we go much wider than that. And our mandate is to be the voice for industry.
Understood. That's great. Thank you.
And there's lots on our
Richard.
website. I'll put a link in there that you can just have a quick link through, and that will give you a bit more. So I'll pop it into the chat in just a minute.
Right,
Kia ora.
thank you. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe matua o te rā, tēnā koutou. Hey, it's really interesting for Moirangi when we talk about te tirohanga o ngai Māori in these spaces in terms of workforce development. From what I can gather of what you said, there's some mahi to be done in terms of cultural competency, right, across all our sectors. Is that part and parcel of your, the huarahi for these plans?
As we, and my understanding is in a lot of the different workers in quality assurance, qualifications, our core work, when we put mātauranga Māori in a qualification, it is absolutely, you have to go out and build people's understanding of that. It will be built into that work. The quality assurance work, a lot of that is affects providers. You can't just put it in and then expect providers to, immediately start using different approaches. So it's actually a natural part of anything we do, was to ensure that whoever it's aimed at does have the knowledge, understanding, and of how they can use it well.
Ngā mihi. And I have another pātai. For those of you who don't know, I sit within Toitu Te Waiwara, which is the Workforce Development Council concerned with health and wellbeing and education, of course. The long game here for Muka Tangata and what you want to embed, right? And I'm having conversations with another couple of councils, what that means for the long game for a kaimahi Māori within your sector. And so we're thinking about things like pastoral care or health and wellbeing strategies within your sector that might actually, help the whakaaro come to fruition, right? What's the end game here in terms of, the longitude of kaimahi Māori within your sector?
Well, we have what do we want to achieve in for Māori in the food and fibre sector? We want Māori to flourish in our sector. Now, of course, their wellbeing is part of that. One of the interesting things, and as John talked about, He Kaikakuringa strategy, the He Kaikakuringa strategy was originally developed in about 2013. It was refreshed last year. One of the key changes to it was wellbeing and economic development sit alongside each other. You can't have economic development without looking at the wellbeing as your people. So when we talk about fitting in with other government strategies, that's a really, really important one for us. And also note some of the really good work that Toitu Te Waiora has started to do in the mental health space, and we are really following that pretty carefully.
I'll just add to that and refer back to a statement that John made around education pathways for our whānau, from kohanga to kora kaupapa to wharekura to wānanga, and then into the employment space. So the long game for us actually doesn't just start with the current generation, also is how can we influence, how can we work with, how can we support, how can we encourage, how can we introduce opportunities within the food and fibre sector, and might I say across all of the workforce development councils, to our whānau members at a young age, so that it becomes a very real career opportunity for them to consider as they're progressing through education system, notwithstanding that we still have some mahi to do to help our whānau transition through those kura Māori environments. So the long game for me refers to the generations, the leaders, the young people that are still coming through, haven't quite got to that age where they're ready to mahi. But, you know, imagine if we can start identifying and encouraging people from an early age to pursue opportunities here when they're of that age. Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. If you could please complete the feedback form, that would be absolutely wonderful. And tell your whānau, tell your colleagues, tell other people that you're working with in the industry about this initiative. Tell them about Muka Tangata. Tell them about the mahi that we're doing in the Māori workforce development space, in the workforce development space in particular, because this Māori workforce development plan and the 14 industry plans are your plans. They have been constructed based on the information that people like yourselves have shared with us. And they can only be as current, as relevant, as applicable as the information that we're receiving from people like yourselves. So whānau, thank you very much for giving of your time this afternoon. We hope that you have gained an insight into the mahi that we do. We hope that this has provided you with a little bit more information around what we're trying to achieve in the iwi Māori tirohanga space. And please reach out to us at any time. I do see a hand up, or I did see a hand up. Oh, I must have been just imagining that. Nō reira whānau, kua mutu tō tātou hui. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. And as we started with karakia, so too will we finished. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te urutapu. Kia wātea, kia māma te ngākau, te tinana te wairua, I te ara tangata. Koe rā e rongo, whakahiria ki runga, tūturu whakamaua kia teina, teina, haumi e, hui e,
Ai.
tai ki e. Tēnā koutou. Thank you, whānau.